Hello, it's Philip Cargon, Tea with the Druid 73. Do pull up a log or a chair. You know this idea we have in these sessions that we're meeting in a clearing in the forest, in a sacred grove of the Druids, in a special place. And as a way of introducing ourselves, we type in our names and say hi. So Ellie is the first to say hi. Marjolein follows next from the Netherlands. Great, good to see you. Pip enhanced. I don't know what that means, but that sounds great. Jason McIntosh. So, great. Hi from Indianapolis, Nova Scotia, California, Southwick, Massachusetts, California. Great. Penny and Arthur in Somerset. Hello. Louisville, Kentucky. Great. Lovely to see you. Fantastic to see you. And so, you know, there's a phrase that I learnt in my training in psychotherapy, which has stayed with me all these years. It was a quotation from Paracelsus, the great alchemist and healer. And he is reported to have said or have written, "In every human being, there is a special heaven, whole and unbroken." And we were taught a particular method in our training in psychosynthesis at the Institute of Psychosynthesis, which has helped me a great deal. And I think it's helped me as well to relate to the natural world and also to the crisis, the environmental crisis that we've been facing for many years, but which more and more people are becoming aware of just recently. And I wanted to share this with you. And so in this, at the Institute, we were taught the understanding that every single one of us has an aspect to ourselves which is wounded, broken, if you like, hurt, has difficulties. But at the same time, there is a special heaven within us, whole and unbroken. This idea at the soul level, at the core level, we are unbroken and whole. And so the challenge then becomes for the therapist is when, and indeed for all of us, but I'll use this example of psychotherapy, when the client sits opposite with you, how can you both relate to the broken side of them, but also relate to the unbroken side? And so Joan Roger Evans, who founded the Institute there, came up with this analogy of bifocal vision. You know, those glasses that are split in two, and so you can have two focal lengths in glasses. And so there's a way in which you put on your bifocals and you're not in denial about the mess or the difficulty or the pain that your client is in, but you're also not in denial about the innate splendor and beauty and wholeness that that person possesses. And you honor and respect both. And in thinking about the world, I find that it's a helpful way to understand what's going on, or for me to relate to what's going on. In other words, I look at the state of the world and I relate to the state of the world, not being in denial about the brokenness of it, not being in denial about the degree of damage that has been caused to the earth, the pain and the suffering in that, and allowing my sorrow for that. But at the same time, I open to the special heaven that the world of nature is, the special heaven whole and unbroken at some level. Now, whether you take that as at an archetypal level, that it somehow always exists at an archetypal level, which would be one understanding that however much something is destroyed at a physical level, the archetype still exists in the causal plane. And at some stage in the future can be manifest in another reality, another physical planet, another incarnation, another place. You don't have to go to such an extremely esoteric view as that. I have a tendency myself in my own belief, but one doesn't have to. One can still recognize the beauty and the perfection in nature as it is now when one experiences it and sees it or thinks about it. And I was talking last week, the Tea with the Druid session that was seen by 17,000 people, and lots of you planted trees as a result of that, and thank you for that. That's fantastic. I mean, wouldn't it be amazing if 17,000 people paid the $10 or so, £10 to have 10 trees planted? We would have planted 170,000 trees just from that one broadcast. Of course, not everybody has, and there are amazing stories that people wrote. Somebody wrote in who was watching the tea who's planted 55,000 trees themselves. And so the main thing is for us to work in the world in the way that feels right to us. And I need that bifocal perspective. I need to be able to see the broken, not to be living in a fool's paradise and not to be being in denial. But I also need to sense the wholeness and the perfection and the beauty in order to give me joy and hope so that I can carry on. Otherwise, I'll be no use to man or beast. So I need both. And there's a great quote from Noam Chomsky about this, about the necessity for optimism to galvanize us into action, even at that level. And I was talking to a friend of mine who runs a charity called the Earth Restoration Service, who lives in Lewis, a fantastic guy, Andreas Conoval. And he was explaining how, I was saying to him, look, is it really good enough just to plant trees in this one-off way, 10 trees here, 10 trees there? And he said, well, of course, every approach is worthwhile, but they have a slightly different approach, which is considered best practice in some environmental circles, which is to do two things. One is sometimes, depending on the geography and depending upon the place, it's best to let earth do the reforesting, so that you, for instance, if you have a parcel of land that's been donated, or you fence it around to keep the animals away, like sheep in the south of England, for instance, and you let the earth regenerate itself, rewilding. And in 10 years, you have the most incredible growth of trees. I've seen, there's a little ash sapling that I can see from out of the window there that has just appeared, and it's probably about 30 feet high now, and it's only been going about 5 years. So that's one way to do it, because the right kind of species grow there and so on. The other way of doing it is to understand that trees with DNA that are local are the best. They will flourish the best. Nature knows what's best. And he has a fantastic number of projects, including planting a tree for £1. And I'll give you the link. I'll give it to you right away while I think about it, but I'll also put it on my blog and place it later also in here. So there it is, Earth Restoration Service. But they also have a project where you sponsor a school to raise tree saplings, teach children about the trees, and then to actually plant the trees out. And in that way, you get community involvement, you get involvement across the generations, you get local trees, so they're more likely to survive. And it's a lovely project. You can sponsor an entire project in one entire school, and they have a waiting list of schools who've agreed to do this in the UK. It's £350. So if you can't afford it, you could conceivably, as a group, a grove, the order has 200 groves, for instance, around the world. If you're listening, folks, imagine if the 200 or so groves of the order each sponsored a school to plant trees. How fantastic that would be. They also have a project called Flutter Flowers, where they create meadows of wild flowers that attract insects, because of course, I guess, we've all heard of the incredible onslaught against the insect population. We've heard a lot about the bee population in the last few years, but actually it transfers to the, sorry, I'm just trying to get my quote to post. There it is, there's the link now. but actually it applies to all the insect populations. And you know, when we go on these meditations and we meet an animal, how often do we meet an insect? So I think it's time for us not only to help populate the outer world with insects, hence sponsoring a flutterflower meadow is a lovely idea for a group of friends to get together with. But I also think we should make contact with the insects in the inner world too. In the Druid Animal Oracle, we have the bee, of course, but there are plenty of other insects that we can make friends with. And so let's go into meditation now. And there's something about every time you affirm the heaven whole and unbroken. It's a lovely quote from Paracelsus. Every time you as a therapist affirm or allow to blossom a little bit or to come out a little bit the heaven that is whole and unbroken in a client, you're doing good. Every time you remind yourself of the heaven that is whole and unbroken that exists within your own being, you're doing some good. And every time we affirm the heaven, the paradise, whole and unbroken, that the natural world offers us, we are doing some good. And so let's go into a meditation now where we affirm this heaven. And we're doing it because at the very least, leaving aside any esoteric theories, which we may or may not believe, at the very least, we're gaining a sense of strength and stability, of calm and of energy. And in doing that, we're better able to be of use in the world, better able to manifest works of good. The more energy we'll have to make good things happen. So if you feel like a meditation, you might like to, well, first of all, let's just do this. It's a little idea, technique from sophrology, which is very helpful. If you're in a position to do this and you want to do this, you just stick your legs out. So you're sitting down, stick your arms up in the air like that, or you can make fists of your hands, whatever, and just taking a deep breath and hold your breath while you squeeze every single muscle in your body. And hold on for as long as you can. Squeeze, 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 squeeze until you can't hold anymore. Make a grimace. You can see me, but nobody can see you. And then go like that. And just let all your breath out. And then close your eyes and just tune into yourself. Aware of any sensations in the body without judging or analyzing these sensations. And you're aware of being seated in front of your computer or your tablet or phone. But there's a way in which you can let that awareness just drop into the background and instead allow in your awareness a sense of being seated in a clearing in the forest on a beautiful morning, blue sky above, the trees around you and the earth beneath you. Sense the earth beneath you, and as you breathe in deeply and breathe out deeply, allow yourself just to relax. All your tensions just floating into the earth. As you sense the earth in all its life, all its energy. You can sense how the soil and the rocks, the minerals and crystals, the worms, the insect, the decaying plant matter, all makes what we call the earth beneath us. And you sense the energy of the earth. You smell the earth. And you notice how, as you tune into the earth, it makes you feel calmer and starts to slow you down, perhaps. You sense the roots of the trees now in the soil. The trunks of the trees stretching up, their branches reaching high into the air. And you sense the trees around you as brothers and sisters, as spiritual beings, living beings that bring peace and protection. And you breathe in the energy of the trees. You breathe in the oxygen of the trees, the essential oils that their flowers and leaves secrete. And become aware of the sky now above you. And sense the energy of the sky flowing into you, so that the energy of the sky meets the energy of the earth within the center of your being. And now, if it feels right for you, I'm going to suggest that you walk through a little path on the side that leads from the side of the grove towards a meadow of wild flowers that lies just outside the wood. So if that feels okay for you, you just see the little opening between the trees and just imagine yourself effortlessly moving from where you are, taking the path through the woodland, sensing the presence of the trees around you. Until you come to the edge of the woodland and you see a meadow ahead of you where the woodland finishes. And as you come into the meadow, you see it's filled with wild flowers. If you don't see things clearly in meditations, that's okay. Just pretend you can, or just sense you can, and just come into this meadow. And then you might like to just lie down with your head propped up, or sit in the meadow. And so you can see this sea of wildflowers around you. And then gradually, as you tune into the beauty of this place, this spot, you start to notice the insect life. You see there are butterflies, dragonflies, and just perhaps, if it's right for you, perhaps a butterfly or a dragonfly will come to rest on your knee or your hand or your shoulder. And you can just sit in silence, just being with this being, sharing life with them. And see if you can be open to the delicacy of the life of this insect, the spirit, the life force, the life that is in this creature. Just be open to it. and allow its color to feed you, to bless you. And then sense it flying away as you ask for a blessing on its life and a blessing on the land. And then knowing that you can return to this place at any time in your meditations. Give thanks for the color, for the beauty of this place, for the life in these flowers, in these insects. And then begin to leave the meadow, walking slowly back through the woods, sensing the trees around you, smelling the trees, coming back into the clearing, finding your place where you began the meditation, being seated. And at this point, you might sense the rest of the group, people from all over the world, seated in the grove too in a circle, all sharing the same love for the earth, for humanity, for the birds and the insects, all creatures. And to show that love, you might want to imagine yourself placing your hands on the earth, asking for a blessing on the earth, a blessing on the land, and a blessing on our lives. Lifting your hands up to your heart, you give thanks and gradually allow your awareness of the sacred grove, of the clearing, to fade as you become aware of being seated in front of your computer or your tablet or screen, fully present, here and now. And when you feel ready, you open your eyes. Thank you. Thank you. I see here an interesting contribution from Rosemary Yates, saying we have 968 acres of forest adjoining World Heritage forests in Australia. In the spring, which is of the autumn in the Northern Hemisphere, we will do a biodiversity enhancement planting with endemic trees. We have 29 threatened and endangered species here. You can see or look at our website for more details of our land. So that's just lovely. And then there's a link, mounthighland.com. And what's beautiful, you know, last week I talked about the story of the girl who throws the starfish in the water to save it. And the old man says, well, you can't save all the starfish, so there's no point. It doesn't mean anything. And the girl just looks at him and says, well, it means a great deal to this starfish. It's the same thing with this. One project. You can look at the whole of the world's problems and say, oh, it's all too awful. What can we do? But these are meaningful projects, wonderful, positive, fantastic projects. And we can't, each of us individually can't save the world. But each of us can do what we can in whatever specific area, whether we want to spend just a few pounds to help, or dollars to help some trees be planted through something like the Earth Restoration Service, or whether it's getting involved with a group like that Rosemary is suggesting here, whatever it is, or clubbing together with friends, or in your grove, your local grove, and sponsoring a project. It all helps. So thank you for being here. I shall make my tea. My tea here has gone cold by now. And then I shall come back and read all your comments. And I can see Julie Babis saying a common blue butterfly and a bee came, and there were roe deer watching me in the woods. That's lovely, Julie. So, okay, so have a lovely week. For the next 2 weeks, I'm going to be with a group on retreat in Brittany, in the forest of Brocéliande. So we're going to have guests for you on Tea with the Druid for the next 2 weeks. So thank you in advance to my mystery guests who will surprise you over the coming 2 weeks, and I will see you in 3 weeks' time. Okay, so many blessings, lots of love, and have a great week. Bye.